Good morning, everyone. I am Heather Westerfield, Chair of the Commission on School Accreditation, present in the fourth floor boardroom of Central High School Building, 359 Northwest Street, Jackson, Mississippi. This meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation is being held today, Thursday, February 1st, 2018, at 10 a.m. via teleconference, pursuant to Section 2541.5 of the Mississippi Code. The notice of this meeting included the date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting, and identified the location available to the public, Central High School, 359 Northwest Street, 4th floor boardroom, Jackson, Mississippi. An audio recording is being made of this meeting, and minutes of this meeting will be recorded. We are also live streaming this meeting. Now we must determine if a quorum has been met. As I call your name, if you will please state your location for the presence for this meeting. Kelly Barfield, present in the 4th floor boardroom. John Brewer,
present MDE 4th floor.
Bush. Sarah Foster,
present 4th floor boardroom.
Roy Gill,
present 4th floor boardroom.
Brian Harvey,
present Clinton, Mississippi.
Ann Jones, Michael Lindsay,
present Gulfport, Mississippi.
Valencia Martin, Michael Miller,
present 4th floor boardroom.
John Mistelis,
Present the Oxford High School, Mississippi.
Anthony Montgomery, Eddie Prather,
Present Tupelo, Mississippi.
Rob Tyner, and Heather Westerfield, 4th floor boardroom. A quorum of the Commission is present at the location stated for the purpose of conducting a meeting through teleconference means. I do call this meeting to order at 10:03 a.m. At this time, I would ask Mr. Brewer to lead us in the invocation, please.
Right. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful first day of February, for the pleasant sunshine. We thank you for all the blessings that you have given us. Father, now I pray for wisdom as we consider the matters that this committee will bring to us this morning. As indeed will bring these matters, and we consider these for what's best for the children in the state of Mississippi. I pray for wisdom for those legislators across the street. They'll make great decisions for our state as well and the children. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Brewer? Before we get started as well, I'd also like to welcome Ms. Barfield to her first meeting, actually to be present in person. She's been with us on a couple meetings via teleconference, but it's good to have you in Jackson this morning. All right, item 2, Commission members, you've received a copy of the agenda. At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. If you would please identify yourself for the record.
Roy Gill, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Gill.
Second, Sean Brewer.
Second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? All right, what we will do today is I will call roll or ask for the vote for the members present, and then I will ask for the vote for those that are on the phone. So those that are present. All right, okay, and then we have on the phone, if you would state your vote into the record, Mr. Harvey.
Aye.
Mr. Lindsay.
Aye.
Mr. Mistelis.
Aye.
And Mr. Prather.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the December 7th, 2017 regularly scheduled meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation. You've received a copy of the minutes. I will entertain a motion for approval. Please identify yourself.
Sarah Foster, so moved.
By Ms. Foster.
Mike Miller.
Second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Members present, all in favor?
Aye.
On the phone, Mr. Harvey.
Aye.
Lindsay.
Aye.
Mistelis.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4, approval to upgrade the accreditation status of the West Bolivar Consolidated School District from probation to accredited. Dr. Vanderford was unable to be with us today, but we do have Dr. Joanne Malone who will speak to this item.
Good morning. Also, just obviously, I'm not Dr. Vanderford. She was unable to attend, so I'm stepping in for her this morning. And also, Erin Myers, our Special Assistant Attorney General, is also not available to be here this morning, so I'll take this opportunity to both the finals who is sitting here. So this item, West Bolivar did submit evidence for us to clear them of the standards that they actually initially put them on probation. And so we are just asking for permission from the commission to move them from probation to accredited at this time.
We'll entertain a motion for approval. Motion by Ms. Barfield.
Second.
By Mr. Gill. Any discussion? Members that are present?
Aye.
And on the phone, Mr. Harvey,
Aye.
Mr. Lindsay,
Aye.
Mr. Mistelis,
Aye.
Eddie Pritchard.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5, consideration and approval of the request from the Okolona Public School District to waive the requirements for Process Standard 2.1 of the Mississippi Public Schools Accountability Standards 2017 for the 2017-18 school year. You do have some backup material for this item in your binder.
For clarity, on item 5, there are actually 2 pieces of backup material. One is on November the 17th, where they initially requested that they asked for this waiver. We then in turn asked them for a little bit more clarity of why they were asking for this waiver. And so the letter for January the 25th is their response as to why they were asking for this waiver on this standard.
So to make sure I have this right, is that, okay, was the assistant principal and the athletic director, okay, and then at the high school, or was it at the middle school?
Moving them to assistant principal to the junior high, not the principal.
No, he went to the
Well,
principal at the junior high, right? Okay,
That's
and
the conflict.
that's the conflict right there. Okay,
So they were initially hired as an assistant principal, but also to serve as the athletic director. But in the middle of the school year, has been promoted to principal, but that's now left them with the issue of athletic director.
right.
Here, is this a temporary request or will it be ongoing?
That is something that you guys can clarify. If you want to grant them this waiver, then it would need to be probably with that stipulation that it would only be for this year.
Because it doesn't say.
Very clear why they would need the exemption for the remainder of the school year, but for the coming school year, then you'd be approving a violation of a set standard. So,
If that's the way, if that's your motion, then we can respond to them and say that if that's the wishes of the commission, that the commission has approved it for this school year.
I was looking at the other information. Did they have a shifting or an addition of schools, or did they just change what schools made up the middle? Is this a new position that they had to find people to staff?
They've reconfigured their schools. From the best I can understand, they've reconfigured their schools, and then when they reconfigured their schools, it had a domino effect.
further need, they can request from the commission in the future.
Okay. Did you have something, Mr. Gill?
I don't think we should give them the option of approving it for next year, requesting for next year. In other words, they're in a bind, and I understand what they're doing, okay, for the rest of this year, but they need to fix it for next year. They're talking about budgeting issues that would cost them in their budget. But if you look at the role of a principal, what their rationale, that's what a principal's supposed to do anyway. So, I mean, I understand for the remainder of the year. I just
Yeah,
Mr.
because
Brewer,
if we
your
leave-
motion could simply be to approve
for the remainder of the year only.
remainder of the school year period.
Agreed.
Okay, so if we approve it for the remainder of the year only, and they don't come back and request for another year, would they be in violation of that standard for next year?
If they continue to do that, yes.
basically need to be in the
Preparing for
market
next
for a
year.
new
Need to
athletic
plan, yes,
director.
they need to plan to comply with the standard.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Brewer for approval of the request from the Oklahoma Public School District to waive the requirement for Process Standard 2.1 for the remainder of the school year.
Correct.
Have a second by Mr. Gill. Is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, then we will vote. Members that are present,
Aye.
members that are on the phone, Brian Harvey,
Aye.
Michael Lindsay,
Aye.
John Mistelis,
Aye.
Eddie Prather.
Aye.
The motion carries. All right, item 6, we have consideration for the proposed revisions to standards 14.1.4 and 26 of the appendices A and B of the Mississippi Public Schools Accountability Standards. And we have Miss Jean Massey, who is going to address this for us.
The first item that I want to discuss with you today is what we come to you each year with, changes that need to go into the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards for the upcoming year. And these are all based on different policies and procedures that have changed throughout the school year. So what I'll do first of all is walk through the justification sheet with you very quickly, just so that you will know each one of the items that we will be changing in the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards. Standard 14.1.4 says that every student exiting the 8th grade should have an individual individual career and academic plan, what we call an ICAP. We've been working very closely with business and industry, with workforce development, and with the governor's office on the initiatives to improve workforce across the state. They're asking that all of their students come into the workforce with an individual success plan. So we would like to change the ICAP language to the ISP, Individual Success Plan. So when a business person asks a student if they have an individual success plan, they will know what they're talking about. We're talking the same language, and we want to look at it in the 7th grade, not the 8th grade, because students are taking so many Carnegie units in the middle school, they need to understand right away how that's affecting their future. So it's moving it from the 8th grade to the 7th grade and changing the language from ICAP to the Individual Success Plan to match business and industry. That's what 14.1 is. Standard 26 are the requirements that every public school has to offer. We're currently at 32.5. We passed last year through the board and through the commission a requirement that beginning in school year 2018-2019, all schools had to offer essentials of college math and essentials of college English. So literacy. So that meant we added 1 additional credit to the English requirements. There were 4. There's now 5, English 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the essentials of college. There were already 6 required courses in math. 2 were elective, so we simply changed 1 of the electives to the essentials of college algebra and left 1 as an elective math, so left the same number of 6. So that's what 26 is now to change the requirement from 32.5 to 33.5. That will now reflect the essentials of college algebra and the essentials of college math. Then you have Appendix A6 and A7. These are the new appendices that we went through this year with our new graduation requirements. In the process of putting all these together, there was a sentence in A6 and A7 that should not have been there. It's not what was approved. It was not what we discussed. And this is to clean up that language. So it says that every student has to have, there's not 2 maths above Algebra 1. All students had to have 4 maths, but Algebra 1 was the one that they had to have. So this reflects that language. And then for Appendix A1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9, we have new computer science courses that will be available next year that will count as the requirement for graduation from one of the science courses. So that's adding these new courses to the list of courses that will meet graduation requirements. Appendix A4 was the appendix that, I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Gill.
When will we have those course codes?
Those course codes have been requested already, and as soon as all of this is approved, those course codes will be put in the new secondary course code manual. So as soon as this is approved, those will be ready for you for pre-registration and for registration next year. About 5 years ago, we began Excellence for All. And if you'll remember, at that time, we were working with NCEE, the National Center for Education and Economics, and we had 3 school districts that were involved in this process. This process evolved from the Excellence for All to what we currently have under law is the Districts of Innovation. And in that process, the only part that's left over from that original is Cambridge. We no longer have the ACT Quality Core. In fact, there is no Quality Core any longer. And there's no equivalency pieces for those. So this is cleaning up Appendix A4 to match what we currently do, and that's just Cambridge, doing away with the Quality Core because that no longer exists. So it's just making the appendices match what we're currently doing. And then Appendix B, where the 33.5 credits are, that's the entire appendices that list all of the 33.5 credits. This is cleaning that up also to match the Essentials for College Algebra, the Essentials of College Literacy, adding the computer courses that we listed above, and making sure that every course that will count for technology and computer science are listed, and school districts do not have to wonder which ones will work and which ones will not work. So that's getting that clean to go. And then Appendix B, we simply move personal finance out of the column with technology and computer science to a line of its own because it's not a computer science or a technology course, so giving it a line of its own. And then the last piece in Appendix B, it listed the only people that we could use for distance learning or for online was the Mississippi Virtual Public School. We put in a process last year where there are additional ways that you can take online courses, and we've asked the legislature also to reflect that, and that bill's already made it out of the Senate. So this would allow more online providers going through our approved online process and give districts more options for online learning. And so those are all of the changes that we're requesting for the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards to be in the 2018-2019 document.
Under Standard 26, where we're going from 32.5 to 33.
Yes, ma'am.
That mean the graduating seniors in 2018 will have what class
This,
will have to have that?
What this is, Appendix 26, is not what students have to take to graduate. These are the courses that if I am a high school, I have got to make sure these courses are in my offered. And so this is making sure that every school that I'm not leaving out. One school is offering a student essentials and another school is not, that every student has the opportunity to these 33.5 credits. Sean.
Can I ask just the rationale on the equivalency chart for Cambridge?
We still have Cambridge. Cambridge was one of the approved Districts of Innovation models. And so there's still is still the equivalency piece in there for Cambridge.
Cambridge, it would be fine.
It would, if they went through the process that the school district that's been allowed to have the Cambridge did, yes, they could.
Or in the second piece, when it says ACT quality core is no longer accepted, got that?
They do not even have ACT
Okay.
quality core anymore.
Was it originally said that ACT was accepted as equivalent to curriculum standards?
That was back, it wasn't curriculum standards. When we did Excellence for All, there were 2 models that you could choose to do for Excellence for All. And this was with work from the National Center of Education and Economics. And the 2 that they had was the Cambridge International, and at that time they had an ACT piece. And it was a very large piece. It wasn't just giving the test. It was training for the teachers. It was additional work. But because we no longer work with NCEE, we no longer have that alignment, and we no longer have quality core that aligns with what we're doing. So we no longer have that.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the second
Yes.
piece of it. I mean, the first piece just says it clearly. I was just wondering about the need. Second sentence. As I was just wondering, was at a time when ACT was equivalent?
The quality core piece, the quality core, not the ACT itself. Those are 2 different things. Totally
Like they're
different things.
2 different programs.
Yes.
Right. I'm just in this sentence. It seems like it's making 2 different statements. One is that quality core is no longer available. Sure, it's gone. But then I was wondering what the second part of it, how it relates to, since quality core is gone, was ACT alone originally that?
But and the ACT quality core is not available, so this ACT piece and its equivalent curriculum is no longer available.
Maybe I can help you. Okay, the ACT quality core is not accepted as an equivalent
That's
curriculum instead of just the ACT.
No.
And I think maybe you're thinking of the ACT assessment.
Right.
No, if you that reads the sentence, maybe that would help you. That is all inclusive. The ACT quality core is no longer available.
Seems like that would be enough.
And then the
That was my
ACT
point.
quality core is not acceptable equivalent curriculum to the standards.
And it could be, but part of the quality core was them also using the ACT. So when the quality core went away, it went away any alignment we had with the 2. That's all out. Any other questions on the different?
Just, Ms. Massey, this is Brian Harvey, and I don't think this requires a change in this area, but the business fundamentals class, the CTE course, students can also get credit for personal finance. You mentioned separating that because from the business and technology, but that wouldn't prohibit that half credit to be given for the business fundamentals class. Is that correct?
That's correct. The law says we have to offer a half a credit in personal finance. It doesn't have to be personal finance. If you look in the footnotes, you'll see the list of courses that will all count for personal finance. And I can go back and add those here if we need to.
Thank you.
Not to beat my point to death, but I know that we use parts of the ACT in case we don't pass a certain section or a certain test, but we're saying it's not aligned.
This,
See what I'm saying?
I can take out the alignment word because it's not aligned to is no longer aligned to take total. When we did Excellence for All, the districts that had been accepted into Excellence for All, they did quality core, they did the AC test, they did the whole curriculum. They used ACT quality core English 1, English 2 as the test they were giving. They used ACT quality core Algebra 1 as their test. We no longer have that alignment piece to use. So when that went away, it took away all the pieces for ACT that we were using in the equivalency piece. This doesn't have anything to do with ACT as an option for assessment. This is only about what we were doing in the Excellence for All program that no longer exists.
And we allow certain scores for ACT to take the place of graduation requirements in some areas. But if we're saying they're not aligned at all, we just...
This alignment is not the alignment for the Excellence for All piece that we've done. That's what's gone. Totally gone.
Other questions for Ms. Massey?
Kelly Barfield, I move that we recommend the Board of Education start the process to amend the standards.
So we have a motion by Ms. Barfield to start the APA process to amend. Nope. To amend standards 14.1.4 and 26 and appendices A and B of the Mississippi Public Schools Accountability Standards. Do I have a second?
Second, roll again.
We have a second by Mr. Gill. Any other discussion? Okay, members present. Okay. Then members on the phone. Brian Harvey.
Aye.
Michael Lindsay.
Aye.
John Mistelis.
Aye.
Eddie Prather.
Aye.
The motion carries. All right, item 8, discussion of the proposed Mississippi Innovation Lab Network project, a partnership between the Mississippi Department of Education and selected local school districts to advance new models of learning that can better prepare all students for success in the 21st century.
I'm going to do a couple of things. I want to give you some background information before I jump into this one a little bit to tell you where we are and how we got to where we are today, but also to tell you that in your backup material, you may see a slight change in some of the things that went out because we did make a few changes based on some recommendation. And the biggest change was in this Innovative Lab Network, the schools and the school districts that we will be talking about today will be from your A and B school district range, from your range, not just any school district. All of this, the Innovative Lab Network came about because when I'm going to start back with what I began in the last piece with, our Excellence for All. About 5 years ago, we brought some school districts in that were allowed to do some innovative type things so we could see how those worked across the state. Then our legislators a couple of years ago passed the Mississippi District of Innovation bill. And since the passage of that bill, in year 1, we moved from Excellence from All into the Districts of Innovation. That first year, if you'll remember, we had Corinth, Vicksburg, and Gulfport as our Districts of Innovation. Last year, we brought in Boonville and Baldwin together, and we brought in Grenada. And we have had 3 districts apply for this year. We've held the interview process. We will be making those recommendations to the board in March. Well, during this process, the whole piece of innovation is supposed to be to take what's working well in the innovation and spread it out to our other districts across the state to give them the same opportunities. We haven't had a process in place to be able to do this. Well, earlier this year, we were invited from the MDE to join the CCSSO, Chief State School Officers Network, in what was called the Innovative Lab Network that they began about 5 years ago, that they started with 7 states. Our state was asked to be a part of it, and those states were there, already had this process in place that was one we felt like would be a good duplication for us. So what we're talking about today is how we take our current processes with our District of Innovations, how we take what we're doing with the Innovative Lab Network and what we're learning across the nation and bring it into Mississippi in a way that we can bring more schools into the innovative piece. And then on top of this, there was one other piece that really got us to thinking about how could we get to where we want to go. You as the commission, you know you've had a lot of requests to look at those process standards and make some changes to the process standards from everything, especially on 140 hours for a Carnegie unit. What does it really mean, seat time? Seat time is different today than it was 10 years ago, but how do we go about making changes to the accreditation standards that we've got some type of research or something that can guide us than just saying, let's change it. So that's what we're talking about in this Innovative Lab Network, is to take all of these things together, put them together to see if we can't come up with a good way to make informed decisions that will allow our districts to move forward and do some innovations that are good for kids that will improve student achievement. So that's what this is about, and that's what I'm talking to you about today. Always start with our vision and our mission. And myself, because I'm in the Office of Secondary Ed, I am really looking at how I can have every kid graduate from high school ready for college and career. Not college or career, college and career. What can we do to provide more opportunities for our kids so they're successful after high school? So that's what I really do. And I think to do that, I have got to get to effective teachers and leaders. So how can I help teachers and leaders see the practices out there that will really help students move forward? That's what our office tries to do. So what we're trying to do is look at a partnership between A and B school districts and school to give them a space to do some innovation so that they can learn and transform our education system. And by bringing them into this network, we have a process in place that we work with them, and then they in turn can work with other school districts so that we can begin to take this not just to A and B, but we can really look at our lowest performing schools and have schools and leaders in schools that can work as mentors with those school districts. We will continue to work with our Chief State School Officers Innovative Lab, look at how we can really look at models to improve learning in the 21st century. How do we get out of what we've been doing and look at ways that we can go? We want to really look at new and creative alternatives to what we're doing that will improve student learning, student performance. This learning innovation is moving from what we think of as 20th century learning in straight rows in a classroom all the time, and really getting out there and see how we facilitate learning and get kids to move forward. We want to look at how we can involve students and teachers to really increase student learning. We've been doing a lot of things the same way for a long time, and we're not getting the results we want. So it's time to look at how we can ask kids how they better learn, how we can ask teachers what we can do to help them. We also want to look at our outcomes. What do we really want to measure in progress? Yeah, we have state tests and we have to do that. But what do we really want a successful student to look like? What does career ready look like? What does college ready look like? What are the experiences we need to give kids to be able to do this? And we need for the adults in the school to be able to deliver this in different ways, in different times and in different measures. One size fits all doesn't work anymore. I think we've proven that with a lot of things that we've been doing. Early college high schools example, our career academies are example. All of these are examples of ways that we need to provide different ways to personalize learning for kids. We've got to do that. Our normal, regular high schools are great for 75% of our students, but what do we do for the other 25 to give them an experience that really works for them? How do we begin to look on what business and industries wanting? Collaboration, problem solving, creativity, learning how to learn. How do we get kids more involved in this? And we can't do it if we continue to do the same thing. How do we look at creating different types of systems that work for kids? And learning doesn't have to occur within inside those walls and with a piece of homework anymore. There's 24/7 access. We all know that. How do we take advantage of those pieces? And how do we create a system that really supports students and allow them to be successful? So that's what we're talking about in this process that we want to go through. Our goal is to build a network of districts and school leaders that can use innovation to improve outcomes for students in Mississippi, not just in one school, but to move these innovations across the state. Because if it's good in one area, why is it not good in another, and why can't we move that forward? We really want to look at sharing best practices. We're not the best in the world with sharing. So how do we put a network together that lets us learn from each other and be able to really take these best practices and move them forward? How do we extend innovative opportunities to our rural areas? Let's face it, where our innovations right now are in really not high poverty areas. They're areas where there's a lot available for students. So how do we move this into our other areas of the state? In one of the areas we really want to look at is middle school. Our middle schools, we've done a lot of work with literacy in the K-5 area. We've done a lot in the high school with the new graduation requirements, but we've missed out on our middle schools. So how do we take what's happening through this innovation lab and move into our middle schools and provide more? We want to be able to support these middle schools and help them grow, but we also, through this process, want to look at how we can look at data to make good changes to Mississippi Public School accountability standards. In other words, if one of the standards you want to look at is the 140 hours of seat time for one Carnegie unit, and we're allowing districts to do 75 minutes, you want to see, is engagement increased? Has attendance increased? Has their ability to score on the subject area test remained the same? You want to be able to see that a change in time is not affecting a student's ability to do that. So this gives us an opportunity to draw that. And you don't want to just see a test score. You want to see engagement of the student. You want to see attendance of the student increase. How does actually changing how long you have in a course and allowing more, engaging students more in school. So those are the type of things we want to look at that really can drive the accountability system. In this process, MDE will be responsible for providing technical assistance, support, and being a contributing partner. We will help identify and evaluate the best practices. We intend to keep a best practices website so that we can share this information statewide. We want to be able to keep a resource page where districts that want to go through some of these innovations don't have to start at the beginning. The resources are there to help them move forward. We want to give other districts to really look at personalized learning, some of the things we haven't been able to. But I think one of the key pieces that we want to do in this is to be the bridge between two districts. If Mr. Gill in Hattiesburg wants to start one of these innovations, then I can be the facilitator to put you with another district that's already there so that you've got not just you as administrators, but your kids have opportunities to see the innovations so that your teachers have opportunities to do the innovation. So what we want to do in this is our districts that have already been identified as districts of innovation, the members in those schools will actually be the leaders of our personal learning community. In other words, Gulfport, Mr. Lindsay and his school, they've done a really good job and have data to show where when they went to their 5x5, their 75 minutes, they've been doing this for a couple of years now. They have data to show the increases in their test scores, the increased opportunities, but there are other schools that would like to try this too. So Mr. Lindsay and his staff will be the mentors for the schools that want to do that. We at MDE will be the facilitators to help lead the meetings and get things together to bring those schools together. So that's kind of where we want to go with that. Then the district will be responsible for that want to be a part of this network. They will put a team together, and we plan to have 4 face-to-face meetings each year. You can select, the district would select the area that they wanted to be a part of, that they would want to work in, and then we would put them in those professional learning communities. And in those professional learning communities, we would have 4 face-to-face meetings. At each meeting, we would have an update of what they've done over the last 3 months. We would set plans for the next, but we'd also be identifying the professional development that they needed in the district to help coordinate those types of things. We'd have monthly webinars and calls to keep up with anybody to see what anybody needed. The districts then would agree to be a mentor the next year. If I go through this process and then I find out it works, then I can mentor a district close to me so that we begin to have a mentoring system across the state. So we build more and more that teachers and students would be able to work from. We would ask each participating district to identify at least one of the groups that they would like to be in. They could identify more to work through this process. And we would ask the districts to assist us in building those best practice documents. So if I'm one of those districts and I do a really good job with online learning through my district, how did I build this process and have those best practices there so other districts can see that? So we'd have a commitment from MDE, a commitment from each district. This is kind of some of the areas that we've thought about that we would like to look at. Personalized learning is big. Blended learning, what can I do? How can I make online learning work? In this one, project-based learning, what does it really look like, and what is the PD that's needed? Even down to competency-based learning. And we're not telling any school district that enters this is what you've got to do. We're asking you to identify an area that you're interested in working in. Our next generation schools, that's looking at everything from early college, high school to middle college. Career academy is an area we've had a lot of interest in. And then even if you get down into the year-round school calendar like Corinth is doing. So identifying areas for next generation schools that we could put you in a project lead the way. Then our middle school initiative, schools that have middle schools that they would really like to see the middle schools improve, to look at middle schools and how we can do work there. And academic and career readiness, we've heard a lot about this one. The personalization, the K-12 awareness, how do we begin to really look at the social and emotional piece that goes into school with the Leaders in Me, apprenticeships. These are just some examples. So as we build the network, our plan is, with your approval today, is that you would enter the network if you're an A or B school district for about the next 18 months, 1 year. We would begin to look at 10 to 15 school districts that want to come into the Mississippi Innovation Lab Network. We would then ask each district to identify the PLC, and that's professional learning community they would like to be in. In other words, if I'm interested in career academies, I would enter that network. If I'm interested in online learning, I'd enter that network. If I'm interested in the middle school, I would do that. We don't want to tell you these are the ones we're going to do. We want you to identify, and once we have the districts and those identified, we will set up the professional learning communities. We will then assign one of our innovative school districts to be the lead on that, and we will work as facilitators over the next 18 months to ensure that the 4 face-to-face meetings occur, that those monthly webinars occur, that we're gathering data from this so that we can inform decisions as we move forward and open up these opportunities to other school districts once we have data to show that it works or not. What we're requesting here from the commission is, in order to make this work, we need to look at the standards in our public accountability standards. And we're just not opening this up to say, if you're part of this network, you get to have waivers on everything. If I'm in a career academy, the only waivers I would be given in that network is seat time, because that's what we're really looking at, is how to make it work. Or it would be seat time and teacher certification. Because in the career academies, a lot of times you need to bring in experts from the field to work in that. So that's the only waivers you would get. If I were in the middle school piece, there may not be a waiver at all because there's nothing needed there. We would identify and have a list together that would go to the Office of Accreditation with the district's name that was in the pathway and what they are receiving a waiver for. Now, we sat down with everyone, and you received in your packet a copy of the redlined items. And what we did was we went through the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards, and we looked at all of the areas that we knew that there had been a discussion over the past couple of years of asking us, was there a possibility for a waiver in that area? These are the ones, we're not saying we're going to use all of these, but we're saying that these could be areas, and what we're asking you to do is allow us to identify any of these red items that would meet the needs of these professional learning communities for next year and be able to bring back to you, the commission, a study from this process to help guide the changes in these accountability standards over the next couple of years. So that's kind of what we have. I'll tell you, up to this point in time, we've met with Dr. Wright, we've met with our districts of innovation to make sure that they would agree to be mentors in this stage. We're bringing the presentation to you today. We have a number of districts. We've tried to keep up with all the districts that have asked us they would want it to be innovation. We're going to have a webinar with them to explain this process if it works. We're going to ask them to come on February the 12th to a face-to-face meeting in Starkville, where we would be giving them the information that's been approved and asking them to identify the 2 to 3 areas that they want to work with. We would come back on February the 15th to the board to have the board approve. If you approve today, March the 1st, we would ask for letters of commitment, and we included a letter of commitment so you could see that we're asking the districts for these. We will begin on the 26th, putting these groups together, having check-in so that we're ready to go. We at MDE have another meeting with CCSSO April the 19th through the 21st to even learn more about what other states have done. A lot of what you see here is information that we've gathered, especially from Kentucky and Ohio through their process. And then we will have in June a 2-day meeting that we would bring all these teams together and work with them over 2 days to begin to get ready for next year. And our first meeting in the fall, face-to-face, would be in September. So that's just kind of an overall view of where we're trying to go. But we think to really make this work and move forward, we need to be able to work in some of these PLCs with some waiver areas, especially around seat time, teacher types of things. We've had a number of districts want us to look at how libraries are used. Corinth had that as a waiver, and it began that process. So as we build, we will try to build out to the strengths of our districts that have already had waivers to see if what they've done works, can be duplicated, or we can improve upon.
How many districts would you say are innovative?
That we currently have 6 identified, and that's the Corinth, Gulfport, Vicksburg, Boonville, and all of those.
Why just start with A and B schools?
That was the request that we had because we want to make sure that districts that are getting waivers for seat time are already meeting the requirements in their students are already successful. So being able to move forward. Now, that doesn't mean that if I'm a lower performing school, I cannot benefit from this. But we have to be very careful up front, and Dr. Wright was very adamant about that.
Just until you determine the success of it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. We would expand out year 1, but anytime you begin a first year, it's almost like a pilot, and you need to be sure that you have everything in place to do this. And that's why we don't want to just open it up to everybody. We need to keep it very small to begin with.
Ms. Matthews, this is Eddie Fraser. You mentioned you all had contacted even a list of those districts that applied for district innovation. Are those ones that were not awarded, will those be the first district that y'all try, or are you just going to open up to all A and B districts?
We are going to, and we've had a number of districts that have asked for help with innovation. We will be sure that those are included. If a district has applied and not received a district of innovation, yes, if they meet the requirements, they will certainly be asked to be in those lists. We don't want to take every A and B school district. We want to be sure that the districts that come in have already begun to look at this in some way and have already reached out and are ready to move forward, because everybody we bring in is going to be in different places too. But we want to be sure that we can support who we bring in.
I hear you saying they can select the PLC within the close scope of things, the areas that they want to participate in.
Yes, sir.
So
that's
to be involved in the whole.
No, sir, and we do not expect to do every one of those that I showed you. we're going to have to select 5 or 6, 4 or 5, depending on what comes in. And someone may select one that we can't support, and that's the only thing they want to do, and they may select not to be in the network because we can't support that. We're going to have to select where the most interest is, and I think, as they say, where we can get the biggest bang for our buck, where we know that there's interest to move forward. And we know some in our minds because of what we've had requests on, so a lot of this is built around those two. Yes, sir.
Other questions for Ms. Massey?
And those in red are the only
ones.
Exemptions.
Only exemptions, yes. And not all of those will be granted to each and every school.
Right.
It depends on which PLC you go in.
That's it.
And we will identify that and even send a list back to you so that you can see who is in which one when we send it to Joanne. So the next time, Dr. Malone, so the next time you have your meeting, we can identify who's been identified and what areas they're working in. Yes, sir. We can do that part.
That's why she did not, we didn't copy all of the standards, is we only copied and pasted for your review the ones are being considered, and in some cases, it's not the whole entire standard.
That's
it's
correct.
in parts. So that's why some are in black and some are in red, and that's why it skips numbers.
We didn't need everything. Those are the ones that...
And it would be individualized depending on what area of interest they're looking at.
That's correct. That's very correct.
And our vote would be to allow y'all to administer the waiver at the time and when it's needed.
That's right. For us to say this is the PLC.
Each one would not come to this board.
No. That's why I brought the one list, so that once we know which PLC, we can then determine as an agency what works, but also with the group. If I identify career academies, why did you select career academies? What are you trying to work for? What do your outcomes want to be? And what are you going to have to do to get to those outcomes? So some of it would be having the districts walk through this process with us too.
Those process standards wouldn't apply to that.
No.
Pittsburgh, Warren, Corinth, and Grenada, the 3 that were currently just passed.
The 3 that we have really sat down and talked to were our first 3. Vicksburg, Corinth, and Gulfport. They have the most information that they gathered. They're the ones we're going to rely on the heaviest. Now, if one of our areas becomes online learning, that it gets identified, then we have to bring in Boonville because they're the ones that have done the work on the online learning. Now, I'll give you another example, Career Academy. We've got Gulfport that's done a lot on Career Academy, but then we have a district, Madison, who has been awarded one of the 8 states to have model career academies. We certainly want to bring Madison in that got the model career academy to be a leader in this. So yes, our districts of innovation may be the ones that lead it, but that doesn't mean we're not going to pull other districts in that are doing really good work around it. So that's part of it too, is identifying what else is going on out there and bringing it in so that we've got the best models to do. But we're trying to put a process in place so that we can actually learn from the process, and we've got information at the end to really be able to drive decisions that you as a commission are going to make about changing any of these standards.
Items in red are incentivizing districts to participate.
And not only that, but allowing them to be able to participate at a level they think is necessary, but then to use those results to come back to you to make changes to the standards that are based on practice, not just what I want to change.
Other questions? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval to establish the Mississippi Innovation Lab Network Project. I have a motion by John Mistelis?
Brian Harvey, second.
And a second by Brian Harvey. Is there any discussion? Okay, my members that are present.
Aye.
On the phone, Brian Harvey.
Aye.
Michael Lindsay.
Aye.
John Mistelis.
Aye.
And Eddie Prather.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I just want to say thank y'all for listening. I think this is a great opportunity. As you could tell, I was pretty excited about this, but I think it's an opportunity to really be able to do some good things and to use models that we've already started to expand out across the state, because there's some really good things going on, and I think this is an opportunity to move it. So thank you.
All right, item 10, we have discussion of proposed revision to standard 14.3 and establishment of Appendix A6 of the Mississippi Public Schools Accountability Standards 2017 for the requirement of a certificate of completion for students with an individualized education plan beginning in school year 2018-2019. And we have Ms. Cagle here who's going to present on this item.
All right, good morning. We're coming back to you today. You'll remember when we brought the graduation options earlier this year, earlier this school year, that the certificate of completion got a lot of feedback, and we were asked to go back with a task force. So that's what we're bringing forward for you today, or were the recommendations set forth. We will. And I've just kind of done some slides based on what this is all taken directly from the appendix that we're proposing. But we want to be clear that a certificate of completion is not a high school diploma. It's not the alternate diploma, but rather an acknowledgement of the student's participation in and completion of his or her individualized education program. So this is what we would call an exit option for our students with disabilities. When we talked to the groups, we felt like we had to have very clear guidelines for who could be eligible for receiving a certificate. So we said you needed to fall into one of these three categories. The first is who could come in right at the beginning of their high school career and at the end of 8th grade have that check on their IEP to say they were going to go for a certificate of completion. This would be, first off, a student without a significant cognitive disability who was at least 16 years old or older. If they are 16 entering 9th grade, they are 3 or more grade levels below their peers in reading and math. And then everyone signs off and understands that they're going to exit with a certificate, but it does not prepare them for life outside of school. Nothing. So you have to have the parent buy in at that point. That was something we heard loud and clear from our constituents, was the kids who they are getting in very late in the game who don't have 5 years or 6 years left of being able to attend school. So we felt like if they were 16 when they were entering high school, they really could go ahead and start a certificate track if their IEP committee felt like that's what they needed to do. We would still want them to try for that standard diploma. But if the IEP committee really felt like that was not an option and this is what they needed to do, these were the requirements they would have to meet before they would be allowed to start high school on a certificate track. Next are our students who have very significant cognitive disabilities, who at the end of 8th grade, as they're entering in, they weren't going to be able to even participate on that alternate diploma track. These are your students who have very, very limited or no receptive or expressive communication, okay? And we would have that same conversation with their parents, that they're not getting an alternate diploma, that it's a certificate of completion and what that means. Finally, hello. Yes?
Hello, Brenda. This is Dr. Martin.
Okay, great. We'll put you down. Thank you.
Okay, finally, students with or without that significant cognitive disability who at the end of their 3rd year of high school or 6 semesters If they had not earned a minimum of 3 English credits, 3 math credits, 2 science credits, 2 social studies, and 5 electives, they could begin to work towards a certificate. They could make a change on that track for their senior year. You still have to have that signed.
Sorry. Dr. Martin,
Yes, ma'am.
we need you to mute yourself if you will, because we can hear your other conversation. You can that's okay. If you will, just unmute when we get ready to vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
We would still have that conversation that if you make that change over in senior year, that they were not going to be prepared for life outside of school, as far as career post-secondary opportunities. And we would want to show that you had evidence that you had really tried for those 3 years to get them a standard diploma. Okay. And there's a little more in the appendix kind of what that might look like as far as the evidence. But we want to show that we've really worked with students, but understanding that if they're not there, if they don't have those minimums, then they might want to go ahead and move over to a certificate track so that their IEP team then has a year to really work on the solid transition skills for getting them employed and in a job and ready for post-school life. As far as the requirements of the certificate, we would really still leave those to the IEP committee to determine what was appropriate for the student. We would want to see, and we would recommend that there be coursework as appropriate that was intensive remediation in their deficit skill areas, career preparation, and life skills. We would say students earning the certificate of completion must have completed at least 4 years of high school and or be at least 19 years old at the time of graduation. So in other words, you can't come in at 16, come for 2 years, and then we exit you with a certificate because you're 18 and you want to go. Okay, so trying to make sure that we're not pushing kids out before they receive all the services that they are legally entitled to receive. And then, of course, all of our students are still going to have to participate in the Mississippi Academic Assessment Program, whether that's through the alternate assessment or through the general assessments.
The idea here is to give them something to aspire to, give them a reason to stay in school, basically.
It is, and our goal is to get them a traditional diploma. I'm not going to shy away from that. That's the goal. We don't want the certificate to be an easy thing that we can, just put kids in and push them off to the side. We want it to be a very narrow, the task force that met really felt like this should not be more than about 2% of your total student population, that everybody else should be getting either that standard diploma or the alternate diploma. But we fully recognize that you're going to have extenuating circumstances and you're going to have kids from time to time who need another exit option. But we don't want to make it where everybody who was getting that occupational diploma, okay, well, now we're just going to put you on certificate track and we're not even going to try. We tried to put in some standards and eligibility requirements that would prohibit that.
How does this affect the district's graduation rates?
Students will count as completers. They do not count as graduates if they get a certificate of completion. No, they're not counted as a dropout. Correct.
Does not hurt their numbers, is it?
What numbers?
It doesn't help their graduation.
It doesn't help their
rate,
numbers,
but it doesn't hurt
Their dropout rate.
Right. It doesn't hurt your dropout, but it will hurt your graduation rate because they will be included in the denominator.
Yeah. Not necessarily all of them. It could be also students with very significant learning disabilities who've gotten so far behind, whether it be because of learning disabilities or behavioral disabilities, things like that, that if they haven't achieved, if they're not going to be able to exit with that diploma, if they're not making those requirements, it's another way that they can exit the system.
Now, the alternate diploma would count.
Alternate diploma is going to count as long as our ESSA plan is approved.
That is correct.
Yes.
But I'm saying students with significant disabilities who cannot graduate with a regular, they're counted against the district still.
In the
Not
all,
graduating.
right now they all are, yes. In the future, if they're able to, if they're higher functioning and able to get the alternate diploma, they will not count against the districts. There will still be a small, and I always kind of call it the 1% of the 1%. It's a small population, but they are there who are not able to work on any academic skills, and they have no communication skills. They're nearly non-responsive.
Federal requirement.
Those are the federal rules that you have to meet those requirements to count for graduation. You've got to be able to do what the gen ed kids are doing, or else the alternate version. Any other questions?
Before we bring this to a vote, I realize there is a mistake, and this is on me. It's my fault. We have in here, this is to establish Appendix A6. In my rush, it should not have been A6. It should have actually been A11. We already have a 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 that was recently established. For so long, we had A through 5, and we knew it needed to be an A, and I'm the one that put A6. So whenever a motion is made, we just need to make sure that it is correctly stated as A11 and not A6. Did I handle that correctly? Okay. Okay. I will entertain a motion for approval to submit request to the State Board of Education to begin the APA process to revise Standard 14.3 and establish Appendix A11 of the Mississippi Public Schools Accountability Standards 2017 for the requirement of certificate of completion for students with disabilities. Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Barfield.
Sarah Foster, second.
Second by Ms. Foster. Is there any discussion?
I just want to clarify on this last one. I'm sorry, I'm slow reading it. All students required to participate in math. Okay, so that's the same as they must participate, but doesn't not.
They have to
required.
participate, but not necessarily pass. They don't. There's no requirements for their proficiency on that, but they do have to take the test.
Those scores are counted in against.
They are. And that's, again, a federal requirement that we test at least 95%.
and we've double checked that numerous times.
We have.
Had a task force to go over after all the, from teachers.
Teachers, yes, we had teachers, special ed directors, high school counselors, building principals, and then we also presented those recommendations to Dr. Wright's teacher council that met late last week, and brought it to all of them for their feedback, for their teacher feedback as well.
Okay, members present, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, on the phone, Brian Harvey.
Aye.
Michael Lindsay.
Aye.
Valencia Martin.
Aye.
John Mistelis.
Aye.
And Eddie Prather.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12 is other business. Do we have other business? Our next meeting is, hang on, I have it on my phone, I think. It's April. April. Other business? All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Mike Miller.
Motion by Mr. Miller. Second?
Prather, second.
And a second by Mr. Prather. Any discussion? All right, members present, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
On the phone, Brian Harvey,
Aye.
Michael Lindsay,
Aye.
John Miskalis,
Aye.
Eddie Prather,
Aye.
and I'm sorry, Dr. Martin. All right, the motion carries. We stand adjourned at 11:10.